The British Empire was vast, encompassing a quarter of the world's landmass at its peak. It spanned continents and oceans, reaching from the Americas to Asia, Africa, and the Pacific. For centuries, it shaped the world, influencing global politics, economics, and cultures. It left its mark on language, law, and culture, with English becoming a global lingua franca. Post-war Britain faced a new reality. The empire was waning, its economy was recovering. The scars of war were still fresh, and the nation was in a state of flux. There was a growing need for labor. Factories and industries were desperate for workers to fuel the economic engine that would drive the country forward. The 1948 British Nationality Act granted citizenship to people from Commonwealth countries. It brought about cultural diversification and economic growth. Festivals, cuisines, and traditions from around the world began to enrich British life. However, it also fueled social tensions. The rapid changes were not welcomed by everyone, and some communities struggled to adapt to the new social landscape. They worried about the impact on jobs and housing. The competition for resources became a point of contention, leading to a sense of unease and uncertainty among the local population. This led to a gradual tightening of immigration controls. Policymakers sought to balance the need for labor with the growing concerns of the public. The Commonwealth Immigrants Act of 1962 restricted entry for Commonwealth citizens. Further legislation in the 1960s and 70s continued this trend. Each new law aimed to tighten the criteria for entry. These acts had a profound impact on people from former colonies, including those from Hong Kong. The new restrictions meant that many who had hoped to build a new life in Britain found their paths blocked. Despite these restrictions, Hong Kong remained a special case. Its unique status as a British dependent territory meant that its residents had a different relationship with the UK. This special relationship allowed for a degree of flexibility in immigration policies concerning Hong Kong. This relationship would become even more significant as the handover of Hong Kong to China approached in 1997. The impending transfer of sovereignty brought about a renewed focus on the status and rights of Hong Kong residents in the UK, highlighting the complexities of immigration control in a post-colonial world. As the 1980s dawned, the future of Hong Kong loomed large. Negotiations between Britain and China over the territory's future were underway. There was uncertainty among Hong Kongers. Many felt a strong connection to Britain. They feared the implications of Chinese rule. In response, the British government created a unique status British national overseas, or BNO. This was enshrined in the Hong Kong Act of 1985. BNO status provided Hong Kongers born before the 1997 handover with a form of British nationality. However, it did not grant them the right to live or work in the UK. The creation of BNO status was a compromise. It aimed to reassure Hong Kongers while acknowledging the reality of the impending handover. It provided a symbolic link to Britain and offered a sense of security in uncertain times. However, it also created a distinct category of British nationals. They were British but without full citizenship rights. This unique status would become a lifeline for many Hong Kongers in the years following the handover. It would serve as a bridge to a new life in the UK when freedoms in their homeland came under threat. The year 1997 marked a pivotal moment in Hong Kong's history. After over 150 years under British rule, the territory was returned to China. The handover ceremony was a momentous occasion. It symbolized the end of an era and ushered in a new chapter for Hong Kong. Under the One Country, Two Systems framework, Hong Kong was promised a high degree of autonomy. It was allowed to maintain its own legal system, currency, and way of life. This framework aimed to ease the transition and preserve Hong Kong's unique identity. Initially, life in Hong Kong continued largely as before. The economy remained robust and civil liberties were respected. However, as time passed, concerns began to grow about China's increasing influence over Hong Kong's affairs. The One Country, Two Systems framework, once seen as a guarantee of Hong Kong's way of life, began to feel increasingly fragile. This sense of unease would escalate dramatically in the years to come. China's influence over Hong Kong's affairs grew steadily, fueling anxieties about the future of freedoms in the territory. These anxieties were brought to a head with the introduction of the National Security Law in 2020. This sweeping legislation criminalized acts of secession, subversion, terrorism, and collusion with foreign forces. The impact of the national security law was immediate. Pro-democracy activists were arrested, books were removed from libraries, and schools and universities faced pressure to censor their curriculum. For many Hong Kongers, the national security law marked a turning point. Faced with this new reality, many began to look for a way out. The political unrest were becoming increasingly alarming. The world watched as the once vibrant city faced unprecedented challenges. The UK government faced growing pressure to act. Many felt a moral obligation to assist Hong Kongers. The debates in the British Parliament were intense, with lawmakers from various parties voicing their concerns and support for the people of Hong Kong. The legacy of the empire and the creation of BNO status weighed heavily on the national conscience. The historical ties between the UK and Hong Kong were undeniable, and this connection played a crucial role in shaping the response. In response to the crisis, the UK government announced a new visa scheme for BNO passport holders in July 2020. This announcement was seen as a beacon of hope for many who were desperate to find a way out. This scheme offered a pathway to British citizenship. It was a significant step, providing a structured and legal route for those who wished to relocate and start anew in the UK. It allowed BNO holders and their dependents to live, work and study in the UK for 5 years. This opportunity was invaluable for families looking to secure a stable future away from the turmoil. After this period, they could apply for settled status and eventually British citizenship. This long-term plan provided a sense of security and belonging for those who chose to make the UK their new home. The BNO visa scheme was a landmark decision. It marked a pivotal moment in the UK's immigration policy, reflecting a commitment to uphold human rights and support those in need. It represented a significant expansion of the rights afforded to BNO holders. The scheme was more than just a visa, it was a promise of a new beginning. It was a lifeline for those seeking to escape. For many, it was the only viable option to ensure their safety and preserve their way of life. It also reflected the UK's enduring ties to its former colony. The historical relationship between the two regions added a layer of responsibility and urgency to the UK's actions. The response to the BNO visa scheme was overwhelming. The sheer number of applications highlighted the desperate need for a safe haven. Around 200,000 Hong Kongers applied for the scheme. Many sold their homes and businesses. The decision to leave was not taken lightly, as it involved significant sacrifices and the hope for a better future. They packed their belongings and prepared to start new lives in a country they had never lived in. The journey was filled with uncertainty, but also with the promise of new opportunities and a safer environment for their families.